things you should never do with a man. And I'm not talking about little stuff like sharing your fries, although that's a crime too. I mean, the 5 things that will cost you your peace, your power, and your self-respect if you let them slide. If you've ever walked away from a relationship wondering, how did I lose myself in this? This is for you. Let's get right into it. You know, one of the most dangerous things you can do in a relationship, and it doesn't happen all at once, it happens in little pieces, is hand over your identity. You don't wake up one morning and just decide, you know what, I think I'll stop being me today. No, it's subtle. It's in the little compromises that chip away at who you are. It starts when you skip that book club you love because he doesn't really get why you like it. Or when you stop wearing the dress that makes you feel amazing because he made one offhand comment about it. Or when you catch yourself saying about everything, what we want to eat, what we think about that movie, what we believe about this. And that until you can't remember the last time you made a decision that was just about you. And here's the tricky part. It doesn't feel wrong in the moment. It feels like love. It feels like, well, I'm just being thoughtful. I'm compromising. And yes, compromise is part of a healthy relationship. But there's a difference between meeting in the middle and losing yourself completely. When you make him the center of your universe, you accidentally shrink your own world. Your hobbies start to fade. Your friendships get a little more distant. Your dreams take a back seat. And before you know it, the version of you that used to light up a room, she's quiet now. Not because she doesn't exist, but because she's buried under layers of what would he think? And here's the danger once your identity is wrapped entirely around another person. Your sense of worth is 2. If he's happy with you, you feel good. If he's upset, you feel terrible. If he pulls away, you feel like you're unraveling. Your emotional state becomes dependent on his approval, his moods, his attention. And that's not love. That's losing yourself in someone else's life. The irony is the very things that probably drew him to you in the first place, your spark, your interests, your independence, are the first things to disappear when you hand over your identity. And when they're gone, not only do you suffer, but the relationship suffers too. Because a partnership is strongest when it's 2 whole, grounded people coming together, not one person disappearing into the other. And I get it. Sometimes it's not because he demanded it. Sometimes it's because you thought that's what love was. Maybe you watched your mom do it. Maybe your friends do it. Maybe you were taught that putting yourself first was selfish. But here's the truth. It's not selfish to protect your identity. It's the most selfless thing you can do for a relationship. Because when you stay, you bring the best of yourself to the table. So how do you keep from losing yourself? You keep your own space, your own passions, your own voice. You make plans that are just for you. You keep friends who remind you of who you were before you met him. You pursue goals that have nothing to do with him. And you guard those things like your peace depends on it. Because it does. And let me just say, if you've already handed over your identity, you can get it back. You don't have to wait for permission, and you don't need a dramatic break, obscene to do it. You start small. Pick up that hobby you put down. Call that friend you've been avoiding because you've been too busy. Wear the dress he didn't like, not because you're trying to prove a point, but because it makes you feel like you again. And with every little choice, you'll feel that spark start to come back. Because here's the thing. If a man truly loves you, he's not going to want you to shrink for him. He's going to want you to grow, even if it means you grow in directions that don't revolve around him. The right man will celebrate your independence, not punish you for it. And if he can't handle you being fully you, then he's not the kind of man you should be handing your identity to in the first place. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can commit without erasing who you are. And if you remember nothing else from this point, remember this, your identity is not a bargaining chip in the game of love. It's the foundation of it. So keep it, guard it, protect it like your heart depends on it. One of the biggest mistakes I see is excusing disrespect. And here's the thing. Nobody ever just wakes up and says, you know what? I think I'll settle for being treated badly today. No, it happens slowly. It's death by 1,000 little paper cuts. It starts with a joke that's not really a joke, but you laugh it off because you don't want to make a big deal out of it. Then it's a promise he breaks. but he's just stressed. So you let it slide. Then it's the times he talks over you, interrupts you, or dismisses your opinion. Again, you brush it off because that's just how he is. And before you know it, you've built a tolerance for behavior that used to make your skin crawl. And here's the dangerous part. The moment you start excusing disrespect, you teach him that it's acceptable. Not because you said, I'm okay with this, but because your silence told him it was safe to keep doing it. People treat us in the way we allow. And when you allow disrespect, it doesn't just stay the same. It escalates. It doesn't matter if he's charming in public or if he's usually a good guy when things are going well. If a man talks down to you, belittles you, ignores your boundaries, or makes you feel small, that's not love, that's control. And control wears a lot of disguises. It can look like humor. It can look like teasing. It can even look like just being honest. But here's the truth. Real honesty builds people up. It doesn't tear them down. Now, some people will tell you, well, nobody's perfect. You can't expect him to never slip up. And sure, that's true. We all mess up sometimes. But there's a big difference between someone making a mistake and someone making a pattern out of disrespect. A mistake gets followed by genuine accountability, an apology that feels real, and changed behavior. A pattern gets followed by excuses, blame shifting, and a promise you've heard so many times you can recite it yourself. And let's be honest, sometimes we excuse disrespect because we're scared of what will happen if we don't. Maybe you're afraid he'll leave. Maybe you're afraid of an argument. Maybe you've convinced yourself that speaking up will make things worse. But I'm telling you right now, letting it slide doesn't make it better. It just pushes the line further and further until you're standing in a place you swore you'd never be. You can set a boundary and still be loving. You can say, I'm not okay with that, without being cruel. You can walk away from a conversation or even from a relationship without turning it into a war. Boundaries are not about punishing someone. They're about protecting yourself. And if someone sees your boundaries as punishment, that says more about them than it does about you. Here's something to remember. Respect is not a luxury in a relationship. It's the baseline. It's not something you should have to beg for or earn. And if a man truly cares about you, he will care about how his words and actions make you feel. You won't have to constantly remind him to treat you like you matter. I want you to think about the last time you felt disrespected and brushed it off. Maybe it was in the way he spoke to you. Maybe it was in the way he dismissed something important to you. Whatever it was, what did you tell yourself in that moment to make it okay? Because that's where the cycle starts. It starts in the self-talk. The little voice that says, it's not worth the fight. It's not that bad. He didn't mean it. But if you have to constantly convince yourself that it's fine, it's probably not fine. You can't control how he behaves, but you can control what you allow. You can choose to address it the first time instead of the 50th. You can choose to walk away from the table when respect is no longer being served. And you can choose to believe that being treated with kindness and dignity isn't asking for too much. It's asking for the bare minimum. Because at the end of the day, excusing disrespect doesn't make you a peacemaker. It makes you a participant in your own mistreatment. One of the quickest ways to lose yourself in a relationship is by abandoning your standards. And I'm not talking about being rigid or never compromising on little things like where to eat or what show to watch. I'm talking about the core values you said you'd never bend on, the things that protect your heart, your self-respect, and your peace. See, we all have that list, even if it's not written down. The things we say in the beginning, I'll never be with someone who talks to me like that. I'll never date someone who doesn't respect my time. I'll never put up with dishonesty. And then someone comes along who's charming, exciting, maybe even a little different from what you're used to. And suddenly that list starts to feel more like a suggestion than a requirement. It happens quietly. He's late a couple of times, but he has a good reason. He makes a comment that crosses the line, but you convince yourself you're being too sensitive. He ignores something you said mattered to you, but you don't want to seem needy. And before you know it, the things you swore you'd never tolerate have turned into the new normal. The problem is when you lower your standards for someone, you're not just changing the relationship, you're changing yourself. You're telling yourself that your needs aren't important. You're teaching yourself that you can't trust your own boundaries. And here's the painful truth. Once you start breaking your own rules, it becomes easier and easier to keep breaking them. We like to think love will inspire someone to rise up to meet our standards. But more often, what happens is the opposite. Our desire to keep the connection makes us drop down to meet their comfort level. And that feels like love in the moment, but it's really self-betrayal in disguise. People sometimes confuse standards with expectations. Expectations are about controlling someone. You have to act exactly like this. Standards are about protecting yourself. I won't stay in a situation that hurts me. And the difference matters because standards aren't about demanding perfection. They're about setting a minimum requirement for how you deserve to be treated. And here's the kicker. When you keep your standards, the wrong people will leave. And that's not rejection. That's a filter doing its job. That's you saying, I'm not going to waste years of my life hoping someone becomes who I needed them to be from day one. Some people will test your standards just to see how serious you are about them. They'll push a little here, a little there. And if they find out the line you drew is really just a suggestion, they'll keep pushing until it's gone. But if they hit that line and realize you mean it, they have two choices, step up or step out. Either way, you win because you either get the respect you deserve or you get your time back. The hard part, sometimes we abandon our standards because we're afraid of being alone. We think, what if I don't find anyone else? But here's what I want you to hear. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. You can be single and feel more loved, more valued, and more alive than you ever did in a relationship where you had to shrink to fit. When you hold on to your standards, you're not making it harder to find love. You're making it easier to find the right love. The kind that doesn't ask you to compromise the core of who you are just to keep it alive. And listen, if you've already let some of your standards slip, that doesn't mean you're stuck. You can pick them back up today. You can have that uncomfortable conversation. You can draw that line again. You can say, this is what I need, and I won't settle for less without apologizing for it. And yeah, it might cost you the relationship, but the cost of staying without your standards is far greater because that's the cost of yourself. Keeping your standards isn't about being picky. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to discount it for anyone. One of the easiest ways to lose yourself in a relationship is by silencing your own voice. And it usually doesn't happen because you decide you don't matter. It happens because you convince yourself it's safer not to rock the boat. It starts small. You don't speak up when something bothers you because you don't want to seem dramatic. You laugh off a comment that hurt you because you don't want to be too sensitive. You hold back your opinion because you know it's different from his and you don't feel like dealing with the eye roll or the argument that might follow. And over time, your silence stops being a choice. It becomes a habit. And the danger of that habit is this. When you stop speaking your truth, you start living his version of reality instead of your own. You begin to measure your words by what will keep him comfortable rather than what will keep you honest. And when your comfort always takes a back seat to his, you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance. Now, let me be clear. There's a difference between choosing your battles and burying them. Choosing your battles is wise. It's saying, this one's not worth my energy. But burying your battles is pretending they don't exist when they do. And when you bury them, they don't disappear. They pile up until one day they spill out in ways you didn't expect: resentment, emotional distance, or a sudden explosion over something small that was really about everything else. Some people silence themselves because they've been taught that speaking up makes you difficult, that keeping the peace is more important than keeping your dignity, that if you express your needs, you're being needy. But here's the truth. Healthy relationships are built on honesty, not compliance. And a man who genuinely cares about you is going to want your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. If you have to hide your thoughts, your feelings, or your opinions to keep him happy, then he's not in love with the real you. He's in love with the quiet version of you that's easier for him to manage. And that's not love. That's control dressed up as compatibility. And sometimes we silence ourselves because we think it's the only way to keep him from leaving. But think about that. If your voice is a threat to the relationship, what kind of relationship is it? If the only version of you he can love is the one who never disagrees, never challenges him, never calls out bad behavior, then he doesn't love you. He loves the convenience of you. Speaking your truth doesn't mean being cruel or confrontational. It doesn't mean every conversation turns into a fight. It means valuing your own perspective enough to bring it to the table. It means trusting that your thoughts have weight and that your feelings are valid, even if they're different from his. When you speak your truth, you give the relationship a chance to grow. Because without truth, there's no intimacy. There's just pretending. And pretending is exhausting. You can only keep up the act for so long before it starts costing you your peace, your joy, and your sense of self. And here's the thing, your voice matters outside the relationship too. When you practice silencing yourself for him, it doesn't stay contained to just him. You start doing it at work, with friends, with family. You stop asking for what you need. You stop setting boundaries. You stop showing up fully in your own life. And that's how you wake up one day feeling like a stranger to yourself. You might be thinking, but what if speaking up pushes him away? And my answer is, good. If your truth pushes him away, then he was only ever holding on to a version of you that wasn't real. Better to lose someone over your honesty than keep them over your silence. Because at the end of the day, your voice is not just how you communicate, it's how you exist in the world. And the moment you give that up to keep a man, you've already lost far more than the relationship itself. So speak up, even if your voice shakes, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it means you find out he can't handle the real you. Because the right man will never ask you to trade your truth for his comfort. One of the quickest ways to burn yourself out in a relationship is trying to fix what's not yours to fix. And a lot of people fall into this trap without even realizing it because it feels like love. It feels like caring. It feels like I'm just helping him be his best self. But there's a difference between supporting someone and carrying them on your back. You start by encouraging him when he's down. That's good. You listen when he vents about work or life. Also good. But then it starts to shift. You're the one finding solutions for problems he's not even trying to solve. You're researching job openings for him, making his doctor's appointments, reminding him about bills, cleaning up his messes, both the literal and emotional kind. And somewhere along the way, you've gone from being his partner to being his personal project manager. The problem with that is twofold. First, you're robbing him of the opportunity to step up and figure things out for himself. And second, you're taking on the weight of things that were never meant to be yours to carry. That kind of load will break you down over time. And the worst part, he may not even notice, because the more you do for him, the more he'll get used to it and the less he'll feel the need to do for himself. And I know some people will say, but isn't that what love is? Being there for each other. Absolutely. But being there for each other is different from doing it all for each other. Love says, I believe you can handle this and I'll support you while you do. Codependency says, I don't trust you to handle this, so I'll do it for you. One builds respect. The other builds resentment. You can't want his growth more than he does. You can't drag someone toward their potential. They have to walk toward it themselves. And if you're constantly fixing, rescuing, and smoothing things over, you're not just wearing yourself out. You're standing in the way of his accountability. Because why should he change if you're always there to pick up the pieces? And here's where it gets even trickier. Sometimes we try to fix someone because it distracts us from fixing ourselves. It feels safer to focus on his problems than to face our own. We get caught up in the belief that if we can just get him right, everything else will fall into place. But that's an illusion. You could spend years trying to shape him into the man you think he could be, and in the process, lose years of your own growth. It's not your job to heal his childhood wounds, break his bad habits, or teach him how to be a man. That's his work. And if he refuses to do it, you have a choice. Keep carrying the load until you collapse, or set it down and let him decide if he's willing to pick it up. Some women stay in fixer mode because they're afraid of what will happen if they stop. They think if I don't do it, no one will. And that might be true, but that's the point. If you stop fixing and he does nothing, then you have your answer about who he is and what this relationship is built on. And that answer might be hard, but it's better than living in the false hope that one day he'll change just because you kept trying harder. Healthy love is two whole people walking side by side, not one person dragging the other along. It's offering support without sacrificing your own well-being. It's saying, I'll be here for you, but I won't do the work you need to do for yourself. Because at the end of the day, the man who's worth your time isn't the one you have to fix. He's the one who's already fixing himself. So here's what it comes down to. Love should never cost you your identity, your self-respect, your standards, your voice, or your peace. If you have to give those things up to keep a man, you're not keeping a relationship. You're keeping a cage. The right man won't need you to disappear to make him feel bigger. He won't need you to lower your bar so he can step over it. He won't need you to bite your tongue so he can feel comfortable. And he won't need you to carry him through life because he can't carry himself. The right man will meet you where you are, love you for who you are, and grow alongside you, not at your expense. And until you find that man, I hope you have the courage to choose yourself. Because the moment you do, you'll realize that the love you were looking for out there was never meant to replace the love you should have been giving yourself all along. Ladies, there are 5 things you should never do with a man. And I'm not talking about little stuff like sharing your fries, although that's a crime too. I mean, the 5 things that will cost you your peace, your power, and your self-respect if you let them slide. If you've ever walked away from a relationship wondering, how did I lose myself in this? This is for you. Let's get right into it. You know, one of the most dangerous things you can do in a relationship, and it doesn't happen all at once, it happens in little pieces, is hand over your identity. You don't wake up one morning and just decide, you know what, I think I'll stop being me today. No, it's subtle. It's in the little compromises that chip away at who you are. It starts when you skip that book club you love because he doesn't really get why you like it. Or when you stop wearing the dress that makes you feel amazing because he made one offhand comment about it. Or when you catch yourself saying about everything, what we want to eat, what we think about that movie, what we believe about this, and that until you can't remember the last time you made a decision that was just about you. And here's the tricky part. It doesn't feel wrong in the moment. It feels like love. It feels like, well, I'm just being thoughtful. I'm compromising. And yes, compromise is part of a healthy relationship. But there's a difference between meeting in the middle and